back from being on the road to recovery in Florida, where I got a chance to meet a young kid that not only impressed me but inspires me. Josh Duckworth, a young kid from Maryland, who's able to share his story of finding addiction early on in his life and finding recovery pretty early on. He's inspiring people, that face of youth, but that face of addiction, now that face of recovery. This is the story of Josh Duckworth.
I'd say for me, the main place that it started was sports and never feeling good enough. You know, my father was my wrestling coach, my football coach, and I came from a family of very successful athletes. You know, a cousin placing in the nation. I had a cousin that was a 3-time state wrestling champ. Not to mention every state champ that came through my area was coached by my father. So, you know, me felt like I needed to be the best and never could reach that goal of being the best. So, you know, I found alcohol, and, you know, that's where it started for me. Even though I wasn't reaching these goals, I still felt okay, you know. It started as like a bonding thing with I was the youngest of about 5 boy cousins. I was the youngest. We grew up like brothers. And they all were the athletes and stuff. And I was the young one that kind of fit in, not because I was the best at sports. You know, even though I excelled, it was because I fit in because I was drinking with them. I can honestly say by 9th grade is whenever the first time I was doing prescription medication. The things that was initially handed to me was a fentanyl sucker and a roxycodone 30 milligram. You know, little blue, looked tiny. You know, I took Percocet 5s before and I knew they were big, so I was like, what's this little thing gonna do? Did the whole thing. Lucky I didn't die, got sick, threw up. Didn't enjoy it at all.
Last month, there were 19 fentanyl deaths and 21 heroin deaths. The medical examiner is calling it a disturbing epidemic.
We have never seen anything comparable to what we're seeing now in this locale and other places I've worked or in the country in general. It's truly an epidemic of enormous proportion.
I wanted to do it again. But what used to be my passion, which was sports, kind of was put to the side, and I was taken off with this whole drug thing. The addiction got worse. You know, my father growing up, who was my coach, was also my friend. And he was against me doing drugs. In high school, we kind of got disconnected because I felt, you know, I wasn't living up to what he wanted to me, and there was kind of felt like there was tension. When I turned 18, he looked at me like a different person. You know, he looked at me like an adult. And it started as a night that we were drunk. I convinced him to snort a Percocet with me. He fell in love. Our relationship started as it was almost like a bonding thing, you know, around my mother. We would go fishing, we'd go hunting, but we were snorting pills. My parents' relationship started falling apart. And my mom was like, you know what, I'm gonna go stay with a friend. 1 week turns to 2, 3 weeks turns to 4, and there me and my dad are saying, damn, I guess we don't have to hide it from our mom no more. We don't have to hide it from our, you know, Jenna no more. They'll come back whenever they're ready. So what found its way into this scenario was heroin. Long story short, my dad caught me and his response was, I want to do that. So I shot my father up for the first time. So after doing the IV, his prescription medications were strictly sold to get more heroin. We owned an inheritance of about 20 acres of land. Everything over about a 2-year period, 5 acres by 5 acres was gone. And it took us to a place where we were in an apartment with no electricity, with candles lit to keep the lights on, so that we were fighting over who had more heroin in the spoon. When it got to that point, I had no idea that there was a rehab. My grandmother has about 20 plus years of sobriety that worked in the field. And if it wasn't for her kind of being like, hey, there's a place where you can go, I probably would have ended up dead. What happened, I went to my first treatment. I wasn't ready. So I went to live with my mother. She took me in. You know, I was still using, but I wasn't as able to use as much as I wanted. So it slowed down a lot, and my life was very boring at this time. Meanwhile, I'm very worried about my father. He chose to go get sober, and we didn't even know. He was in Florida, and what happened was we got a phone call from a treatment center. Andre actually contacted my mother, took it out of his own, to reach out to her, because all he talked about was losing his family, all this. We went down for like a surprise family weekend, and my mom seen the change in him. He was there for about 60 to 90 days. When he got out, they ended up getting back together. And here I am, actively using, stealing the car when I can, and one day when I came home, he said, you gotta go. He shipped me to Florida. What happened was I got to a point in relapse that I realized I couldn't do it no more. I couldn't use just one time. One time for me means homeless. That's where it took me last time. I was homeless for a week, desperate to get help, and my insurance said, we've covered you enough. Desperate for help, emotionally broken, physically on the verge of death, if you ask me. And by the grace of God, that's the only way I can explain it, I got a phone call and I was scholarshiped into treatment. The recovery side of it, I'm beyond grateful for my higher power, the people in this fellowship, and people like the ones that reached out. Growing up, you're like, oh, I want to drive a Porsche or a Bentley, or I want to live in a mansion. Well, I can honestly say my four-door Kia, when I'm driving it, I feel like I'm driving a Porsche, all right, or a Bentley. When I wake up in my townhome, I feel like I'm waking up in a mansion, because I got a wife and a son that call me a husband and a father. My parents are proud of me, and it's all because of this program. If I was in active addiction, I'd be dead. It's unreal. 88 people in Delray died last month. Whenever you're not happy with the way that you're living now, there's people to reach out to. Define recovery for Josh Duckworth. I would say amazing, unexplainable, peaceful. It's not hectic no more. Recovery for me every day is simple. That's it. I don't have to worry, oh my gosh, what am I going to do tomorrow? And I don't have to think about how I'm going to lie about what I did yesterday. We got married July 25th this year. She's been by my side through a lot, and she was comfortable to go through with the wedding this time. So I guess everything she sees to change as well. Marriage is great, family's great, everything's great, man. Sobriety is good.
Finding recovery young is important, especially if you find addiction young. Josh shows us that he can find value in the lessons of his youth. And it's great to share these stories of inspiration with other people. A kid named Josh, an addict named Josh. Check his page out, follow him, and share his inspiring story with others. We'll see you on the next episode of On the Road to Recovery. I'm Michael DeLeon.